2099, Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 1. Chains of Code. The sky above New Neo City was a canvas of perpetual twilight, the sun a mere spectator peering through the heavy veil of fog that shrouded the forest of skyscrapers. The city, a behemoth of steel and circuitry, throbbed with the pulse of a million LEDs, a stark reminder of the United Blockchain Territory's omnipresence. Amidst this electronic labyrinth wandered a figure, a specter of the revolution. Known only as Shadow, his athletic frame moved with purpose, a whisper against the cacophony of the city's heartbeat. The stylized Guy Fawkes mask clung to his face, a visage of anonymity that was his only shield against the prying eyes that littered every corner, every alleyway. Once, Shadow had stood proudly amongst the architects of this digital age, a pioneer in the era of decentralization. But that was before betrayal by those he once called allies, those who had traded their ideals for the cold embrace of power and currency. Stripped of his past, he had become the embodiment of the cause he now lived for, the liberation of society from the shackles of corporate servitude. Tonight, like many nights before, he was set to rendezvous with his crew, a cadre of rebels each carved by their own tales of sorrow and defiance. Phoenix, with her fiery mane and scarred visage, was the first to arrive. A former titan in the world of code, now a phoenix risen from the ashes of her creation, turned against her by the very corporation that once exalted her genius. Her fingers, calloused from endless nights at the keyboard, itched to dismantle the chains she had unwittingly helped forge. Then there was Sphinx, whose androgynous features were as much a riddle as the blockchain puzzles they adored. Cloaked in mystery and tattoos of code, Sphinx had grown up in the bowels of the city, watching as the promise of blockchain became the tool of their oppression. Their intellect was a blade, honed sharp on the whetstone of rebellion. Finally, Wraith slinked in, a shadow within shadows. Agile and lithe, they were a former street hacker, a ghost whose personal vendetta against the corporate tyrants was etched into every line of their obscured face. The digital screen that often masked their features flickered with a cascade of patterns, a symbol of the anonymity that had become their creed. They congregated in the bowels of an abandoned subway station, a relic from a time when the world was measured in miles and not in data packets. Graffiti screamed in silence from the walls, and the air was thick with the musk of damp and decay. This was their haven, their sanctum from the watchful eyes above. Their meeting was a confluence of whispers and shadows, a dance of rebels poised on the knife edge of revolution. Together, they plotted their next move, a strike at the heart of their oppression, the blockchain repository. It was the vault of secrets, the core from which the corporate entities exerted their stranglehold over the populace. To breach it was madness, a task deemed impossible by those who clung to the remnants of sanity in a world gone mad. But for Shadow and his crew, it was the only path forward. In the chains of code that bound the world, they would find the key to its liberation, or its further damnation. As they left the station, dispersing into the fog, the city seemed to hold its breath. The revolution had begun, and with it, the hope that the chains of the New World Order might at last be shattered. 2099, Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 2. Ghosts of the Old World. The night clung to New Neo City like a shroud, its secrets concealed by the silver fog that rolled in from the old sea. Beneath the city, in the bones of a world that once was, the abandoned subway station echoed with the ghosts of its past. It was here, amidst the whispers of a bygone era, that Shadow convened his team, a motley crew bound by a common cause. The station was a canvas of rebellion, graffitied walls telling stories of dissent. Flickering lights cast erratic shadows, illuminating the faces of those who dared to challenge the New World Order. Phoenix arrived first, her fiery red hair a beacon in the gloom, her scar a stark reminder of their shared enemies. Sphinx followed, their presence as mysterious as the cryptic tattoos that adorned their arms. Last to emerge from the darkness was Wraith, their face a shifting digital mask, a cipher for their inscrutable thoughts. They gathered around an ancient map table, the surface scarred and worn, a relic of the old world. Shadow stood at its head, his Guy Fawkes mask a symbol of their resistance. "The world we knew is gone," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of their reality. "But in its shadows we find our strength. Tonight, we plot our course back to freedom." Phoenix's hands danced over a holographic display she had set up, conjuring images of the blockchain repository. "The chains that bind us are forged from the code I once wrote," she said, her voice tinged with regret and resolve. "It's time I break them." Sphinx nodded, their eyes reflecting a mind that saw through the labyrinth of the blockchain. "Every system has its weaknesses," they murmured. "I've walked these digital pathways in secret. I know their echoes. It's time they heard ours." Wraith's gaze remained fixed on the digital screen before them, the patterns swirling like the thoughts in their mind. "They took everything from us," they spoke with a quiet fury. "Our privacy, our peace, our lives. We are the specters they never planned for. We are the vengeance they never saw coming." As they spoke of the old world, they shared memories of open skies and unwatched streets, of a time when the word privacy still had meaning. Each tale was a thread in the tapestry of their resolve, weaving a bond forged in the fires of loss and defiance. Shadow let the nostalgia and pain hang in the air before sweeping it aside with the back of his hand. "Tonight, we honor the world that was by fighting for the world that should be," he declared, rallying his crew. "The path we choose is fraught with peril, but it is ours to tread. We do so not as phantoms of the past, but as harbingers of the new dawn." Together they pored over plans, their strategy a symphony of cyber warfare and subterfuge. For every measure of control exerted by the United Blockchain Territories, Shadow's team had a countermeasure, a stroke of genius or a daring risk ready to be taken. As the meeting drew to a close, the rebels clasped hands, an unspoken pact between them. They would return the next night to set their plan into motion, to strike the first true blow for freedom in the shadow of Satoshi. The station seemed to sigh as they departed, the echo of their resolve lingering in the stale air. The ghosts of the old world watched in silent approval, their hopes now entwined with the living that dared to dream of change. 2099. Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 3. Echoes of Rebellion. In the steel heart of New Neo City, where the corporate towers pierced the sky like spears of ambition, the rebellion's first note was struck. The team, once shadows in the underground, emerged as wraiths of defiance, each playing their part in a symphony of distraction and chaos. Phoenix's fingers flew across her console with the precision of a maestro, orchestrating a series of cyber attacks that lit up the net like firecrackers. False alarms blared across security systems, doors locked and unlocked in rapid succession, and surveillance feeds flickered with static. Her decoys were a masterpiece of misdirection, digital mirages that sent corporate security scrambling to snuff out fires that didn't exist. Meanwhile, Sphinx deployed their expertise in a different manner. They slipped through the city's arteries, a silent enigma, planting devices that whispered sweet nothings into the ears of every smart device they passed. Traffic lights flirted with chaos, autonomous vehicles hesitated like nervous suitors, and drones swirled in bewildered patterns. Sphinx's touch left a trail of benign anarchy, a carnival of the mundane turned on its head. Wraith was the ghost in the machine, their digital visage an echo in the vast networks. They infiltrated the data streams, a specter sifting through the ones and zeros, planting seeds of doubt within the algorithms that ruled the city. Their code was poetry, a digital haiku that spoke of freedom and the fallibility of the systems that sought to contain it. Above them all, Shadow watched, the architect of their descent. He had set the stage for this dance of disruption, his knowledge of the city's skeleton key to their ploys. As his crew wove their web of diversions, he prepared for the true objective, a prize beyond value, the heart of the blockchain repository. As the corporate forces descended into confusion, the team converged on the repository's location. The building was a monolith of steel and glass, the physical shell of the digital leviathan they sought to slay. Shadow led the charge, his mask a beacon in the night, as they breached the perimeter. Inside, the chaos of the outside world was mirrored by the pandemonium of security protocols in disarray. Phoenix and Sphinx worked in tandem, one guarding their digital flank while the other dismantled the physical barriers with silent grace. Wraith, ever the enigmatic force, prowled the data corridors, ensuring their operations left no trace in the system's memory. The high-tech heist unfolded with the tension of a wire pulled taut, every second a gamble against time and technology. Their movements were a dance, each step calculated, each gesture imbued with purpose. They moved as phantoms through the repository, unseen, unheard, but felt by the very air that carried the electric charge of their mission. Finally, they stood before the core, the sanctum of the digital dominion they sought to liberate. Phoenix's hands were steady as she interfaced with the core, her mind racing through the virtual labyrinth. Sphinx guarded the door, a sentinel whose very presence was a riddle to any who approached. Wraith enveloped the core in a protective shroud of code, an echo chamber that would turn any intrusion upon itself. As Phoenix breached the final layer of security, a hush fell over the team. They were in, the heart of the beast laid bare before them. Here, they would plant the seeds of rebellion, a virus that would dismantle the chains of control, link by link. The echoes of their rebellion would resonate through the city, a clarion call to those who yearned for the freedom of the old world. This was but the first move in a grander game, a gambit that would determine the fate of their cause. And as they made their escape, slipping back into the shadows from whence they came, the team knew that their actions this night would be the spark that would ignite the fires of revolution. 2099 Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 4. The Sphinx's Riddles. In the aftermath of their incursion into the blockchain repository, the team regrouped in the clandestine comfort of their hideout. The room hummed with the electricity of anticipation. They stood on the precipice of unveiling a secret that could alter the course of their struggle. It was time for Sphinx to unravel the enigma of Satoshi's legacy. Sphinx's domain was a sanctum of screens and scrolls of ancient code, a digital oracle's lair. Their eyes, alight with the reflection of cascading data, were fixated on the labyrinthine structure of the blockchain. The secret, as they believed, lay encrypted within its deepest layer, a treasure locked away by riddles only the worthy could solve. The team gathered around as Sphinx initiated the odyssey through the blockchain's convoluted pathways. Phoenix's fingers were stilled for once, her role relegated to that of a watchful protector over the network's integrity. Wraith's presence flickered through the subsystems, an ever-vigilant guardian against any trace of intrusion. Shadow paced behind them, his mind working through strategies and contingencies. The blockchain was an intricate tapestry of cryptographic threads, each block a knot of puzzles and traps. Sphinx approached each with a philosopher's patience and a hacker's cunning. The first was a series of algorithmic mazes, their solutions shifting like quicksilver under Sphinx's deft touch. As they navigated through, the digital walls of the maze seemed to whisper ancient secrets, known only to them. Next came the cryptographic conundrums, strings of numbers and letters that twisted into themselves like Ouroboros. Sphinx's mind danced through the possibilities, their fingers scribing the keys to unravel the cipher. With each successful decipherment, the blockchain yielded, revealing deeper layers of complexity and challenge. The third trial was a hall of mirrors, reflections of code that imitated and mocked the original. Here, Sphinx's resolve was tested as they sifted through the illusions, seeking the kernel of truth hidden within the lies. It was a game of shadows and subtleties, where the slightest misstep could lead them astray. As they delved deeper, the riddles grew more profound, touching on the philosophical underpinnings of cryptography and freedom. They encountered puzzles that were not just to be solved but understood, each solution a revelation of the blockchain's nature and its creator's intent. Phoenix watched as Sphinx's hands slowed, their brow furrowed in concentration. The riddles were speaking to something beyond the blockchain, to the very heart of why they all had joined the rebellion. It was a testament to their cause, a reminder that their fight was not just against the tangible chains of corporate control, but also against the intangible fetters of ignorance and complacency. Suddenly, Sphinx stilled, their fingers hovering over the console. The final riddle lay before them, a question that seemed to echo from the genesis of the blockchain itself. It was a riddle that asked for more than intellect. It demanded wisdom. Sphinx turned to their companions, their eyes reflecting a depth of knowledge that went beyond code and data. They spoke, and their words were the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, revealing the path to Satoshi's secret. Together, they input the final answer, a collective breath held between them. The blockchain responded, its layers peeling back to expose the core. There, hidden in the Genesis block, was the pathway to Satoshi's secret, a map to a new future, a blueprint for freedom. The Sphinx's riddles were a crucible, and in solving them, the team had forged themselves anew. They now stood ready to take the next step in their rebellion, armed with the knowledge that would empower their cause. The riddles had been answered, but the journey was far from 2099. Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 5. Phoenix's Flame. The air was thick with the electrical scent of ozone and ambition as the narrative folded upon itself, delving into the past that had sculpted the enigmatic entity known as Sphinx. Before the subversive luminary became the heartbeat of the rebellion, they were the architect of the very systems they now sought to dismantle. Phoenix's origin was not born of shadowed alleys or whispered insurgencies, but within the sterilized corridors of innovation, where their brilliance first flickered to life. As a prodigious coder, their talents were once the crown-jeweled NextCorp, a corporation that prided itself on pioneering advanced security systems. It was there that Phoenix's code first took flight, a symphony of algorithms and protocols that promised an impregnable fortress in the digital realm. Yet, as their creation soared, it caught the eyes of those with darker intents. The corporate eagles perverted Phoenix's innovation, twisting it into a tool for surveillance and control. A digital shackle hidden beneath layers of user agreements and false promises of security. The revelation of their code being corrupted was the spark that ignited Phoenix's transformation from a corporate golden child into a mythic figure of resistance. Now, as the team prepared to breach the next barrier, they turned to Phoenix, whose flames of knowledge would light their way through the darkness. The task was formidable. The security system they faced was a behemoth of Phoenix's own making, a multi-headed hydra of firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and fail-safes. Seated at her console, Phoenix's hands danced across the keyboard, her mind a step ahead of the security she once devised. Her code was poetry, a language of liberation that spoke directly to the heart of the system. With each keystroke, she whispered to the ghosts of her past creations, coaxing them to turn on their new masters. The rest of the team watched in a reverent silence, understanding that this was more than a mere bypassing of security measures. It was Phoenix's redemption song. Wraith, the sentinel of the shadows, ensured that their digital footprints were erased as swiftly as they were made. Sphinx, ever the enigmatic guide, provided insights into the labyrinthine logic that governed the system's deeper functions. Shadow stood guard, a silent sentinel ready to act should the physical world intrude upon their digital ballet. As Phoenix navigated through the security, she faced echoes of her former self, each line of defense a reflection of her once naive belief in the corporation's ethos. But with each barrier she dismantled, she reclaimed a piece of her essence, her code evolving in real time, adapting and overcoming the chains she had once forged. Finally, with the grace of a digital phoenix rising from the ashes of her former life, she breached the core. The security system lay open before them, a conquered titan that yielded its secrets to its creator. The team had gained invaluable ground, their path cleared by the flames of Phoenix's resolve. The chapter closed with the team poised on the brink of their next great leap, the past and present blurring into a singular drive for freedom. Phoenix's flame had not only illuminated their path, but it also set ablaze the convictions within each of them. They were no longer disparate rebels. They were a force of change, and their fire was only beginning to burn. 2099. Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 6. Wraith's Vengeance. The rebellion's crusade had always been a mosaic of personal sagas, each thread woven with the same needle of defiance. But among these, Wraith's tale was spun with a darker yarn, dyed in the hues of loss and retribution. As the team descended into the concrete veins of the city, where the streetlights flickered like dying stars, Wraith's vendetta unfurled like a shroud over their mission. Wraith was once a shadow within the corporate hierarchy, unseen yet omnipresent, until the corporations extinguished what he held dearest. They had taken his family, collateral in a ruthless campaign to silence dissenters. The corporation's machinations left him with nothing but a hollowed heart, craving vengeance. Now, as part of the rebellion, he channeled his anguish into a force to be reckoned with. The streets were a chessboard, and the team's movement was the opening gambit. Opposition came not in the form of coded barriers or digital locks, but as street-level enforcers, the pawns of the corporate agenda. They were the embodied reminder of the corporation's stranglehold on society, armed with the latest tech and a mandate to quell any stirrings of rebellion. As the team maneuvered through the city's underbelly, Wraith moved with a purpose that was almost spectral, his presence an omen of the retribution that followed in his wake. Every encounter with the enforcers was a clash of ideologies, the fight spilling across alleys and abandoned subways, the graffiti-laden walls bearing silent witness to the struggle. With each confrontation, Wraith's prowess became evident. He was the embodiment of the team's darker necessity, a harbinger of the pain that fueled their cause. His tactics were a blend of precision and ferocity, a reflection of the personal cost etched into his being. His movements were swift, a blur against the stark backdrop of the city, as he turned the enforcers' own momentum against them, a ghost within the machine of their order. The team's solidarity was their armor, and Wraith's vendetta was the blade they wielded. Phoenix provided technical overwatch, her code weaving protection around their physical forms. Sphinx deciphered the patterns of their adversaries, predicting their movements as if they were a puzzle to be solved. Shadow, ever the unyielding bulwark, was the last line of defense, his resolve unshaken by the physical manifestation of their fight. The grassroots level of the conflict was raw and visceral, a stark contrast to the sanitized corridors of corporate power. Here, the rebellion was tangible, its pulse beating in time with the hearts of the oppressed. The team's actions reverberated through the social strata, sparking whispers of hope among the downtrodden, fanning the embers of resistance into a conflagration. As the chapter drew to a close, the team emerged from the skirmishes not unscathed but undeterred. Wraith's vengeance had been a guiding force, a specter of the pain that each of them carried. Yet, it was also a testament to the indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished by the cold hand of corporate dominion. In the quiet aftermath, as the echoes of their rebellion lingered in the air, the team understood that their fight was not just for the future, but a homage to the ghosts of their pasts. Wraith's vengeance was a silent oath, a promise that the losses they mourned would be the catalysts for the dawn they sought. 2099. Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 7. The Repository Heist. Beneath a sky painted with the neon glow of 1,000 advertisements, the team stood before the repository, the digital Fort Knox of the age. The building was a monolith of modern architecture, all sleek lines and reflective surfaces, standing as a bastion of the corporate regime. Inside lay the secret they had been chasing, shrouded in layers of security that made it the enigma of the digital world. The heist was a symphony of their collective talents, each member playing their part in an intricate dance of infiltration. Phoenix had crafted the blueprint of their assault on the repository with meticulous care, her code carving a path through the labyrinth of firewalls and countermeasures. Sphinx, with his cerebral approach, had already mapped the esoteric patterns of the building's digital heartbeat, ready to predict and counter the AI defenses that awaited them. Wraith, ever the enigmatic force, cloaked their advance, weaving a shroud of electronic shadows to mask their approach. And Shadow, his name ever fitting, was the solidity in their fluidity, the calm in their storm, ensuring their physical vessel remained undetected by the swarm of surveillance that perpetually buzzed around the repository. As they breached the threshold, the team encountered a silence that was almost sacred, the quiet sentinel of the world's secrets. The first layer of security was a deceptive welcome, a digital mirage that Sphinx dispelled with a flick of his fingers across the holoscreen. They moved deeper, through corridors where the air itself was a conductor of surveillance, every breath potentially betraying their presence. It was Phoenix who led them through the cryptographic maze, her algorithms dancing with the vault's defenses in a tango of intellect and intuition. The repository security was a living entity, its code an evolving beast that learned and adapted. But Phoenix was its creator, the betrayed deity who knew every secret of her wayward offspring. Yet, as they reached the heart of the repository, they found their path barred by something unforeseen. It was not encryption or code that held the secret aloft, but an ancient mechanism, a lock that required a key of flesh and blood. It was a safeguard against the very tide of technology they rode, a door that demanded a human touch, a pulse. The revelation was a curve in their straight line to victory, a riddle wrapped in irony. For all their digital prowess, they were faced with the primal simplicity of a lock and key. It was Wraith, with his knowledge of the streets and their secrets, who possessed the answer, a replica of the physical key, crafted from the whispers of forgotten lore and underworld dealings. With the key turned, and the final barrier falling away, they were met with the culmination of their journey. The secret was there, within reach, but it was not a mere string of data or a trove of wealth. It was knowledge, the forbidden fruit of the digital age, the understanding of how the world could be remade, not in the image of the few, but for the many. The heist of the repository was their crowning achievement, a heist not of riches but of revolution. As they exited the repository, the team carried with them more than victory. They held the power to change the course of history, a secret that would ignite the fires of rebellion across the world. The future beckoned with open arms, ready to be shaped by the hands of those who had dared to challenge the titans of their time. 2099, Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 8. Masks and Monsters. The repository's air, once sterile and unmoved, was now thick with tension, a stage set for the impending drama. The team, with the secret in hand, felt the weight of their prize, an invisible yet palpable burden. Yet as they turned to leave, they found their path obstructed by the very adversary they had sought to evade, the enigmatic figure known only as the Curator. The Curator was a specter of the corporate world, a legend whispered in the hushed tones of those who dared speak against the regime. Clad in an intricate mask that obscured all but the sharpest glint of his eyes, he was both nothing and everything, the embodiment of the system they fought to dismantle. The standoff was silent, a tableau vivant framed by the glow of holographic displays. It was in this silence that the ideologies of the two forces collided, an unspoken war of wills and philosophies. The Curator spoke first, his voice a modulated melody of disdain and power, questioning their motives, their audacity to challenge the world order. Phoenix, with the fire of her namesake, retorted with a passion that resonated in the sterile chamber. Her words were a mirror to their cause, a declaration of the identity they had chosen, not as thieves or anarchists, but as liberators from the shackles of an oppressive digital oligarchy. As the verbal duel unfolded, Wraith stood as the embodiment of vengeance, his own mask a stark contrast to that of the Curator's, a visage of resilience carved from the shadows of his past. Sphinx's intellect shimmered in his eyes, analyzing, calculating the myriad outcomes of their confrontation. And Shadow, true to form, was the quiet sentinel, observing the interplay of power and ideology. The Curator, a monster not of flesh but of the system, moved with an assurance born of absolute control, his every gesture a testament to the unyielding nature of the corporations. But the team, they were the masks of rebellion, each a monster to the established order, each a harbinger of the change that was to come. The standoff was a dance as intricate as any system they had hacked, a delicate balance of threat and resolve. It was a game of chess played with words and wills, where each move was as vital as the one that would come after. The Curator revealed his hand slowly, offering them a place within the system they sought to destroy, a testament to their value and the threat they posed. But the team, bound by a shared vision, rejected the gilded cage. The standoff culminated not in violence but in understanding, the recognition of the masks they all wore, whether for control or for freedom. In the end, the Curator stepped aside, not out of defeat but out of respect for an adversary worthy of the world stage. As they left the repository, the team carried with them more than the secret. They bore the realization that their true power lay not in their anonymity but in what they represented. The masks they wore were not just disguises but symbols of a cause that transcended their individual selves, a cause that was now unleashed upon the world, ready to confront the monsters of their making. 2099, Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 9. The Satoshi Paradox. Under the pale glow of their safe house's energy-efficient bulbs, the team gathered around the holographic projector, the ethereal blue light casting ghostly shadows on their faces. The secret they had fought so hard to uncover was finally within their grasp, and as Sphinx initiated the sequence to reveal Satoshi's legacy, a collective breath was held. The data streams coalesced into a single coherent image, an advanced algorithm that was the epitome of blockchain evolution. It was the master key to the digital chains that bound the world, a cipher capable of either liberating society or shackling it to an even more relentless overseer. Satoshi's secret was a paradox, a duality of potential that weighed heavily on their conscience. Shadow, ever the silent observer, now felt the stirrings of a profound dilemma. With a few strokes on a keyboard, he could dismantle the financial empires that had risen on the backs of the many, or he could inadvertently create a vacuum that would birth chaos and suffering as powers vied to fill the void. His hands hovered over the keys, the gravity of their decision a tangible force in the cramped room. Phoenix's usual fiery confidence wavered in the face of such uncertainty, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities and consequences. Wraith's thirst for vengeance was tempered by the realization that their actions could harm those they sought to protect. And Sphinx, the architect of their digital crusade, found himself questioning the very foundations of their mission. The Satoshi paradox was more than a technical enigma. It was a moral crucible that challenged the very core of their beliefs. As Shadow delved into the algorithm, his mind wrestled with the philosophical implications of their discovery. Were they to be the arbiters of a new world, or was the choice itself a trap laid by the enigmatic Satoshi, a test of their resolve and ideals? The debate that ensued was fervent, a clash of ideals and fears. The power to dismantle oppressive structures also bore the risk of creating new tyrants in their stead. The allure of potential utopia warred with the specter of an even greater dystopia. In the end, it was Shadow who articulated the path forward. They would release the secret, but not as a weapon or a salve. They would present it to the world as a choice, a collective decision to be made by the very society they sought to free. The team would serve as guardians, ensuring the knowledge was not exploited by the few but understood by the many. As the chapter closed, the team prepared to disseminate the secret, not as a silent specter in the night, but as a clarion call to the world. The Satoshi paradox would not be their decision alone. It would be a question posed to humanity, a challenge to the world to choose its own destiny. And as the dawn approached, they were ready to face whatever answer the day would bring. 2099, Shadows of Satoshi. Chapter 10. A New Dawn, last chapter. The horizon bled with the first light of dawn, a symbolic convergence for the team as they faced the precipice of their monumental decision. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery and the distant stir of the waking city. In their hands lay the power to redefine the future, to cast down the old guards of control, or to seal away the Pandora's box that Satoshi's secret had become. Shadow paced before the window, his gaze lost in the awakening sky. "It's not just about what we do," he murmured. "It's about how we do it. We have to consider the aftermath." Phoenix nodded, her resolve steeled by the night's revelations. "We ignite change, not chaos. We must guide this transition, ensure it doesn't spiral out of control." Wraith, ever the warrior, conceded to the wisdom and caution. "And if the corporations fight back," he asked, the edge in his voice betraying his readiness for the battles to come. "We will be there to counter," Sphinx answered, his hands dancing across the projector's interface, setting the stage for their final act. "The secret will be a beacon, not a weapon. We educate, we reveal, we support." The team coalesced around a unified strategy. They would release the algorithm incrementally, paired with an educational campaign that demystified its power and potential. The information would be encrypted, accessible only to those with the will to understand and the wisdom to use it responsibly. As the sun crested the skyline, bathing the room in golden hues, the team initiated the first phase. Shadow's fingers flew across the keyboard, releasing the initial sequence to a network of trusted allies, activists, thinkers, leaders of silent revolutions. Phoenix's code ensured the spread of knowledge was viral yet contained, a controlled burn through the digital landscape. Wraith stood guard, a sentinel against the inevitable backlash. And Sphinx, the master of riddles, wove a narrative that challenged the world to rise to the occasion. The chapter, and indeed their story, concluded with a sense of potential, a world teetering on the cusp of transformation. Satoshi's secret was out, not as a tempest, but as the first rays of sunlight piercing through a long night. The team watched as their message spread, a digital dawn heralding the promise of a new day.